Hello and welcome to another edition of the Rest of Season Top 150 show. My name is Adam Levitan. Each and every Wednesday on this show, I am joined by Mike Leone and Mark Dankerbring to talk buy lows, sell highs, trade targets, rest of season rankings, etc., etc. Mark, good morning.
Good morning, Adam. It's a great day to be here. We fired off, I think, 7 NBA props already on this big Wednesday slate. NBA season officially underway. Rocking a new Red Hot Chili Peppers sweatshirt. They came out with a new album last Friday that I've been enjoying. So great time to be alive.
It is a great time to be alive. NFL props, NBA props, NBA and NFL DFS all blasting at the same time, as well as golf, by the way. Big golf tournament down at the CJ Cup. Anyways, Leone, it's afternoon for you in the worst time zone, the East Coast. How's it going?
You know, I'm fine with my time zone.
Good. Each week we do rest of season top 150 rankings. We put a ton of work into this. We think it's very useful for trades, buy lows, sell highs, all kinds of stuff like that. We take this list very, very seriously. It's not some BS list we pull out of our ass. You can get access to this list at any time through our Draft Kit Pro or the in-season package. At the end of the show, we will fire off one move to make. And by the way, we have been white hot on the moves to make. Also, if you're into NBA, NBA DFS, NBA props, as Mark mentioned, be sure you check out what we have at establishthorun.com. Full projections for every player in every game, every day, and tons more around that. All right, Leone, I thought DJ Moore was an awesome pick. I thought DJ Moore, middle, end of round 3, was just a no-brainer. Slam it in. Yeah, the quarterback play we thought could be bad, but could it really be worse than Sam Darnold, Kyle Allen, Teddy Bridgewater, corpse of Cam Newton? Could it really be worse than that, the quarterback play? The answer is yes, it can be worse. Baker Mayfield was worse. PJ Walker was, I don't think I've ever seen this, a negative average depth of target for PJ Walker in his start in week 6. Now PJ Walker has a neck injury. If Sam Darnold can't go, they might have to go to Jacob Eason, Colts 4th round pick in 2020. I'm one of the people that has DJ Moore. Leone, what do you say to these people? I don't think we can even, like, obviously we can't trade him. Nobody's going to give us anything. So what do you think about what to do with DJ Moore?
Yeah, I mean, he's a hold. I certainly wouldn't drop him in, a regular 12-team league. He's still earning opportunity. He's still in the prime of his career, coming off 3 straight, 1,100-yard receiving seasons. We're taking the L on him, but that doesn't mean that you do something foolish that's going to hurt your team. You still want to hold on to him in just the hopes that Sam Darnold comes back and it's better. Maybe he gets traded and it's better. And if you want some light at the end of the tunnel, at least he's earning opportunity, right? Like, this team is trying to get him the ball. He is earning targets. They're just the most inefficient targets of all time. So there's some light at the end of the tunnel for DJ Moore. But currently right now, I'm starting guys like Romeo Doubs, is someone, for example, this week who I would be starting ahead of DJ Moore in my season-long lineups.
By the way, with Sam Darnold at the beginning of last year, I mean, they came out and they were hot. First game was Sam Darnold, 6 for 80. Then DJ Moore, second game against New Orleans, 8 for 79 with a touchdown. 8 for 126 against Houston. 8 for 113 and 2 touchdowns against Dallas. That was all with Sam Darnold. So I'm not dropping him. I actually think that getting Sam Darnold back would actually be like a good thing, a bonus. I mean, I keep on saying it, but I actually think it'd be good. We get Sam Darnold back, and they were start to cook with gas. On
the offseason thesis was, well, it can't get worse than Sam Darnold. Right. And here we are now saying it can't get any worse if Darnold's back in there. So
yeah, there's also a chance. There's also a chance CMC gets moved as well, and obviously Robbie Anderson was just traded, so the volume could get pretty nutty for DJ Moore, where he's seeing a 30% target share. Yeah, despite who's at quarterback.
You do not drop guys who have a 25% target share, period. Like, you just don't. Like, very few guys in the league are capable of earning that, period. But let's go to the other side here, where maybe DJ Moore will do what Robbie Anderson did, just bitch until you work your way out of town. Now, there's a lot going on here. Obviously, Marquise Brown is someone we've dropped out of the top 150. There's still a chance he returns before the end of the season, but I think you can drop him in most formats now. He's going to be out, 5-6 weeks, it sounds like. In the meantime, they trade for Robbie Anderson. They get DeAndre Hopkins back from suspension all at once. Mark had a positive outlook on DeAndre Hopkins last week. I had a negative outlook. Things are certainly different now, though, that Marquise Brown is done. What do you think about Robbie? Would you be looking to acquire Robbie, Mark? And would you be looking to acquire or trade away DeAndre Hopkins. Value is going to be really high right now on DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, I would not be looking to acquire Robbie. I think with Hopkins back, Zach Ertz, still commanding a lot of targets. Rondale Moore has seen a good target share as well in the slot. And then they also work in their running backs a bit. So I think, at best, Robbie Anderson is going to be kind of the fourth or fifth target in this offense. And, we keep harping on they aren't a very successful offense at this point. So I'm not too interested in Robbie Anderson. I don't really think this helps him that much. Sure, he might catch some long touchdowns, but there's really kind of no way to predict which week that'll happen. I don't think the volume's going to be there. So would not really be interested in adding him. In terms of Hopkins, I certainly think this obviously clears the path for a lot more volume. And right now we have him projected for about a 25% target share going into this Thursday night game, which is right around 9 targets. So I think that's what you can expect kind of moving forward, between 8 to 10 targets every week with a ceiling for more, especially if Hollywood Brown doesn't come back. I don't know if I would be selling high on him. I think it's honestly a little better of a situation to sell high now with Marquise Brown out, just because the expectations are super high.
Yeah.
But I think he's a great wide receiver to start the rest of the way. So it just kind of depends on what you're getting back. I have him in one league. I would like to hold him just because I've held him this long and I'm excited to play him and think the targets are going to be there. So I'm more of a hold and kind of enjoy the breakout of Marquise Brown getting hurt and the elevated volume. But, you obviously have a take that it might be a good sell high.
I mean, this is one of the worst offenses in the league. Let's not sugarcoat it. I know they have exciting players that people like. They are 31st in yards per play this season. Their scheme and their offense is straight up bad. DeAndre Hopkins is 30 years old and was bad last year. I mean, he scored a bunch of touchdowns in his limited time, but he was bad. And so I don't think DeAndre Hopkins is going to save the offense. I actually think that if Marquise Brown was healthy, he would have outscored DeAndre Hopkins. I know Mark had a bet the other way against Dink, which we'll unfortunately never know the result of. I think, though, one thing that we've talked about a lot, Leone, is the quarterback stuff. Can Kyler Murray break into this top tier of quarterbacks with DeAndre Hopkins? My take is without Marquise Brown, no. I did notice, though, that Kyler was looking to run a lot more in that game against Seattle than I had seen through the first few weeks. And some guys just aren't capable of ever getting close to that Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Mahomes, Jalen Hurts type tier. Kyler is one guy who at least has the skill set to do so. We have him 45th overall as we continue to bump up the elite quarterbacks. Do you think Kyler can fit in there, Leone? Because some people might be kind of tilted on Kyler Murray. Maybe they want to give him up.
Yeah, no, I think you got to hold Kyler. I'm pretty optimistic. As you mentioned, he was running a lot more last week, and it did seem like a pretty conscious decision for him and the coaching staff to have him run a bit more. He had previously sort of been running only when they were frantically playing from behind, the first several weeks. And I realize this offense has been horrible 31st, but to some extent, I mean, if they can just creep back anywhere towards middle of the pack or even the 20th best offense in the league, Kyler's fantasy output is going to look a lot better just because the touchdowns really are what holding him back right now. This whole offense is sort of revolving around him. They don't have much of a choice. So I'm pretty in on Kyler, and I'm excited to see the rushing. I want to see it for another week to make sure it's something that's going to be a little bit sticky, but I'm pretty encouraged by it.
Okay. Let's go to a buy low. I don't know if you can even buy low on this guy anymore, but I was so encouraged by the way Chris Godwin looked and was used on Sunday. I was so scared in the Falcons game when Chris Godwin only ran a route on 51% of Tom Brady dropbacks. That was a game that they were winning for most of the game. Atlanta came back and almost won, but still the Godwin stuff wasn't great. In a game they were losing most of the way against Pittsburgh, and the game was close the whole way, Godwin ran the most routes on the team, led the team in targets at a 30% target share. This role that he has, where in 2 wide receiver sets, he's opposite Mike Evans. In 3 wide receiver sets, he plays the slot, is so incredibly valuable. We know about the offensive line woes, get the ball out quicker. I think underneath to Godwin is something that we saw against Pittsburgh. And so it's real close between Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. If people are not that high on Chris Godwin right now, he'd be someone that I think is a no-brainer to try to add. I said this as my move to make, buy Chris Godwin a few times, I think, over the last few weeks. So hopefully you guys have him by now. Shout out Penn State. But yeah, anything to add there, Mark, on the Tampa situation?
Well, yeah, we have these rankings for half PPR. So that's kind of why we have Evans a spot ahead. In PPR formats, I would have Godwin slightly ahead, as you mentioned, just because the volume has been so good. He's had 10 targets and 12 targets in the 2 full games that he played. And even, in his limited action against Atlanta, he still saw a target on over 20% of his routes run, which is, really strong. And it's just going to be an elite role with Brady. So, I think one thing I'm interested in talking about is potentially trading someone like Michael Pittman, who, we think might be a little bit of a sell high for someone like Chris Godwin. I think that's an interesting trade if you want to go, just player for player, wide receiver for wide receiver. I know Leone is, high on Godwin and relatively low on Pittman. So curious his thoughts there if he thinks that's solid.
Yeah, I do think it's solid. I holding out some more optimism for Pittman than I had previously. I'm really curious to see what the team does when they have Jonathan Taylor back. But last week they made a real conscious decision that basically said, like, this offense isn't working. We need to do something else. And they ran, no huddle practically the whole game. Their average play clock in neutral situations when the ball was snapped was 14 seconds, which is incredibly high. As a result, they ran 74 plays. They also previously only had a pass rate over expectation. Their highest previously was 1%. It was plus 9% this game. So when JT's back, I don't think they'll run the offense this way, but if they kind of have a hybrid of what they did last week and what they did before, there's more routes to Pittman getting there. The issue with Pittman has always been, he's a 25% target share guy, not like a 30 plus guy. And I feel like people treat him like a 30 plus guy. And when you're just a 25% guy in an offense that doesn't throw a ton and leans run heavy, it's a problem. So Pittman will definitely need the offense to be somewhere in between last week and where it started the season to be where the market values him. If it goes back to what they've traditionally done with Jonathan Taylor, I think Pittman's going to disappoint, and I would rather have Godwin.
Right. And I thought Pittman was an interesting sell high. Matt Ryan's not going to have many more games like this in his entire career. Throw it 58 times, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, no sacks taken. I mean, that's not going to happen very often ever again in Matt Ryan's career. Obviously, Michael Pittman benefited from that. I do think he's an interesting sell high for sure.
Well, yeah, I think as I think it's a game plan specific, thing against the Jags. They had 10 days to prepare. They probably knew better if JT and Hines were going to be out than we did, the public. So they game planned to just throw it a ton. I think it's good betting against it and kind of selling high on Pittman after he, catches 13 balls like that. I just don't think that's going to happen again.
All right, let's go to Washington. Do you guys think there's any merit in buying some of these guys? And the assumption would be that Taylor Heinicke is a major upgrade on Carson Wentz. I kind of think that he is not a major upgrade, but an upgrade, like enough of an upgrade for competent quarterback play, competent decision making, competent locker room leadership. I could see this past game actually improve a decent amount. The guy that I think I'm probably higher on the market is Terry McLaurin, who I think is one of the better receivers in the NFL. And as Mark pointed out on Twitter, McLaurin's target share last year with Heinicke was around 25%. This year with Carson Wentz, it's been like 15.9%, which is just really low for someone of Terry McLaurin's caliber. Now, yes, Curtis Samuel is healthy this year. Yes, Jahan Dotson has stolen some targets. But to me, I mean, Terry McLaurin is the guy here. So I kind of like him as a buy. Mark, any more thoughts there on the Washington stuff and how we're factoring in Heinicke versus Wentz?
For sure. Yeah. I just want to clarify. It's not, I don't think like McLaurin is going to get necessarily back up to that 25% immediately with Heinicke in there. There definitely is more target competition, but I think we can expect a bump to 21%, which is an extra target or 2 per game compared to what he's seen this year, which is, a notable bump for someone with the talent of Terry McLaurin. So, I think Heinicke might add a little more consistency, and, oftentimes we just see quarterbacks like this who have continuity and a lot of reps with a certain player, will kind of look their way and in crucial situations. So I do think we can expect a couple more targets per game from McLaurin. I don't think Heinicke is a big enough bump for the whole offense that I'm like going out to buy Samuel and Dotson as well. I think it's, kind of McLaurin or nothing. If people are panicking on him and want to sell, for the most part, he's pretty much the only guy I'm targeting in trades.
I remember in the offseason when we had a lower projection on McLaurin post the Wentz trade and the people were rioting.
Oh, yeah. I did. The guys in Washington always asked me to come on and do radio. And I went on and was honest about what I thought about Carson Wentz. I got to tell you, the people did not like that over the summer. They did not want the Carson Wentz takes over the summer. But now I think they're happy to have Heinicke. And I think I agree. The one other take that I had here is I think Brian Robinson's a great story. He's a timeshare back who does not play in the pass game on a team that's not going to score a lot of touchdowns. These are like the kind of backs, the kind of running backs that I don't want if I can get something for Brian Robinson right now. And by the way, I'm no tape guru. I think anybody with eyes thought Gibson looked better than Robinson in that game on Thursday night against the Bears. And so, and there were some comments after the game too. We need to get Gibson a little bit more. And so I think if somebody can give you something for Brian Robinson, I think that's worth noting.
Yeah, someone in the comments was asking who they should target with Jeff Wilson. And I think like if you lump Jeff Wilson and Robinson together, obviously they're different types of bets, with Wilson being a short-term guy, but San Francisco has, a couple tough matchups. And we saw last week that Wilson's pretty game script dependent. And then after the bye, Eli Mitchell's probably back. Robinson, you've got more long-term value, but both these guys I think are worth flipping for maybe someone like AJ Dillon or Tony Pollard, who I think if it breaks right for them, have really high-end upside. And I don't think you're going to get absolutely crushed on the week-to-week startability between those guys.
Yeah. I mean, clearly Jeff Wilson's starting to lose some work to Tevin Coleman, and a big appeal of it was he was the only one getting carries, and now Tevin Coleman's in there getting carries as well. Speaking of ugly running back situations, Mark, we should go to this Rams situation. I mean, they exile Cam Akers. I don't think they like Daryl Henderson that much. I think they're just like, well, we don't really have anyone else, and Malcolm Brown sucks, and Ronnie Rivers sucks, and Kieran Williams got hurt. And so let's just go with Daryl Henderson. They still gave so many guys carries. Skoranek got carries. Kupp got carries. Brandon Powell got carries. And as I mentioned, Rivers and Malcolm Brown also got carries. So I'm actually pretty bearish on this. They also lost Joe Noteboom, their left tackle, who was filling in for Andrew Whitworth, who retired. So, I think the offense is kind of a mess and broken. I think I'm pretty lower than market on Daryl Henderson, although admittedly, I'm not sure what the market thinks of Daryl Henderson. What do you think about all this Rams stuff, Mark?
Yeah, we have him as an RB3 right now, which I think is fair. I think he's an okay flex play and half PPR leagues. And then with all these bye weeks going on, I think he's, a decent plug into the RB2 slot. In terms of selling or buying, I would not be buying actively. If anything, I would try and sell, if someone's valuing him as, kind of locked in RB2. I don't necessarily think that's the case. You mentioned the issues along the O-line. I don't think he's going to be very efficient with how they've struggled to block at this point. And then, Malcolm Brown could see goal line touches. And Daryl Henderson just clearly not necessarily a priority for the Rams at this point. So I think if someone values him as an RB2, I'd be willing to trade him. But if you have him, kind of hold him and he can be a flex option for you as these bye weeks go along.
Derek says Pittman for Aaron Jones straight up in standard. I think that's an interesting question. And by the way, I retweeted this morning. This question was kind of leading, but Aaron Rodgers was on the Pat McAfee show, and they basically spent 2, 3, 4 minutes talking about Aaron Jones needs the ball more. And obviously, I agree. The problem, of course, is that his pass game role, Aaron Jones, has not expanded in the absence of Devonta Adams. I mean, how can you lose Devonta Adams and Aaron Jones only gets 3.9 targets per game or so? That's crazy to me. I still think I prefer Aaron Jones straight up here over Michael Pittman. It would certainly depend on my roster, though. Leone, any takes on Pittman versus Aaron Jones rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean, these guys do have pretty varying values between even half PPR and standard. And the standard scoring would lean me towards Aaron Jones just because I think Pittman's going to have a lot of 7 for 80, 7 for 70 type games that just aren't that valuable in standard. Aaron Jones has been really disappointing. I was saying to Mark and Jack when we were doing our projections this week, I'm like, your target share is too light. And then I went and looked at his target shares and we're actually being aggressive on Aaron Jones's target share. So that part has been disappointing, but his efficiency, I think, is still there. I think you're going to see some games like he had against the Bears where he just has these huge ceiling games. And ultimately that's going to just be more impactful over the course of the season than what Pittman's going to do. So I would make that deal.
Okay. Let's talk about the Travis Etienne stuff. I'm having a hard time getting a handle on exactly when they choose to use James Robinson and when they choose to use Travis Etienne. It hasn't exactly been fluid, all the kind of workload stuff there. I think Etienne is better, but I don't think Etienne is looks that great or anything like that. I'm not really tempted to buy on either. I don't really have James Robinson at all. I do have some Travis Etienne, and I'm cautiously optimistic about it, but I'm not fist pumping it in that I have Travis Etienne on my roster. Mark, what do you think about Etienne versus J-Rob rest of season?
Yeah, I mean, I'd prefer to have Etienne just because of, kind of rookie and more upside in terms of his, explosiveness, I think, at this point, and his pass catching ability. He's definitely been the go-to guy in passing game situations. So that's encouraging, especially in, PPR leagues. Robinson, I mean, Etienne has outsnapped Robinson now for 3 straight games, but it's been a pretty tight split. It's not like he's, icing him out. And then they also have JaMychal Hasty mixing in for some snaps, and he ripped off that long touchdown run. And that's actually, even though it might only be 4 or 5 touches a game going to Hasty, that's kind of annoying when we want Etienne to pop here. So I think Etienne is okay as a buy at this point. I think he's a solid RB2, obviously with a lot of upside if Robinson were to go down. But at this point, I think it's kind of RB2. You're holding on to him. If anyone is, selling, you can take him for that value, but I wouldn't treat him as an RB1 at this point.
Leone, I'll let you take your Juju Smith-Schuster victory lap. I was ready. I was certainly concerned, and I'm still concerned. He only saw 5 targets in that game against the Bills, but you can kind of see what happens. No matter where a guy gets targeted on the field, if he's reasonably athletic and reasonably talented, he can do stuff with it. Juju on the field for almost every drop back with Patrick Mahomes is going to have games like that. You could say it was a little bit fluky, but that's kind of what happens when you play with Mahomes. So I don't know. Any thoughts on Juju, Leone? And then what would you think about Juju versus Etienne?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the Juju outlook really didn't change much from last week. I guess the only good thing is like we at least saw something there, and there's like a mindset of like we saw some actual production that makes us feel a little bit better. As I said last week, like if it keeps not happening, we'll keep sliding him down some, and it happened. But so we're leaving him just where he is, or even up just a touch. I mean, we had those guys like basically the same in the top 150. I would just make that trade based on the depth of your team. I know that's a boring answer, but quite frankly, that's what I would do with Etienne. I do love that the efficiency's been there. I mean, he's at 5.6 yards per carry, he's 11.2 yards per reception. It's just a question of, is this kind of like the Breece Hall track, like a little bit more gradual where he ices Robinson, or is this more like a Zeke, Tony Pollard thing where we're just going to be like looking at Etienne like we've been looking at Pollard for 3 years, and it just hasn't quite happened yet.
Yeah, I don't think Etienne has done enough to like blow the doors off James Robinson. I just don't think that he's played well enough to do so.
He's also not getting as much work in the pass game as we hoped, kind of like with Aaron Jones. Like you need a little bit more work there.
For sure. Okay, Leone, let's talk about Damien Pierce. Damien Pierce coming out of the bye. He's had this outrageous workload. The team is bad, though. We have him 38th overall right now, RB14, which is very aggressive, I think, on Damien Pierce. But, man, workload is awesome. And he's shown an ability to earn targets on early downs. We know Rex is playing the pure pass downs, but Damien Pierce earning targets on early downs. Would you be selling Damien Pierce now? I mean, you might be able to get something really good for Damien Pierce in some leagues. I mean, AJ Brown for Damien Pierce. Jesus Christ, Anthony. My God, man. I mean, you're going to give me a heart attack here. I want AJ Brown, but go ahead, Leone.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. Like I was too low on Damien Pierce to start the year. So it might just feel like my bias in saying sell high on Damien Pierce now. But it's one of those things where like the prior does kind of matter a little bit, because I've moved him up probably as much as the market has. Just my starting point was different. And I still have some of the concerns that I had, which is basically how valuable is this role going to be if Houston is bad, And I think, we saw a situation where they led most of that Indy game. They played really close games against Denver and Chicago. They won against Jacksonville. Like, I don't think the way their games have gone is reflective of the way their games are likely to go moving forward. And a back, even if he's getting 85% of the carries, if your team's not running a lot of plays and you're playing from behind, there's going to be a lot of meh weeks. And I would much rather have a really high-end receiver like AJ Brown. I would much rather have Breece Hall than Damien Pierce, who I think adds more juice in the passing game. It was just a better prospect overall. So there's definitely some moves I think you can make involving Damien Pierce to sell high on him.
Yeah. Okay. Mark, let's go to this Wan'Dale Robinson stuff. And then also we could throw into the mix there Tyquan Thornton, kind of some guys that people are picking up off of waivers. How excited should they be about them? Wan'Dale earned 4 targets on 11 routes run. Obviously, that's not a sustainable targets per route run rate, but at least shows that he can step right in and do it and gain trust from Danny Dimes right away. Given what else they have, I mean, it's almost has to be a very rapid rise for Wandale in terms of usage. I'm excited about him. I was excited about him before the season, though, so I don't want to get too far out of line here. What do you think about him, Mark? We have him 116th overall. And then Tyquan Thornton's just like a fast dude, a very, very fast dude playing in a somewhat crowded but mediocre wide receiver core. I don't think he made our top 150, but any other thoughts? Yeah, he didn't. But any other thoughts on him and Wandale, Mark?
With Wandale, I think the opportunity upside is just really strong here. You mentioned 4 targets on just like routes in the mid-teens, and the Giants are literally calling up Marcus Johnson from the practice squad and having him run the most routes every week. And Darius Slayton, who is on the outs, those are the 2 guys leading the Giants in routes right now. So there's really pretty much no competition for targets. So I think Wandale is a great buy. I think trading someone honestly like Hunter Renfrow, who is competing with multiple other strong target earners in Vegas, someone like Brian Robinson. Like I think Wandale, we have him pretty low in the rankings as of now, just because we're not sure what the snap share and workload's going to look like. I wouldn't mind moving him up more. I think the upside here is pretty strong, just given the offense. Brian Daboll is doing an awesome job with that offense, despite the limited talent. So I think buying on Wandale now is good before we see, the routes really climb. In terms of Tyquan Thornton, he's certainly fast, but and we'll probably have some big plays like we saw against the Browns. But you mentioned it; it's just a pretty crowded wide receiver room, and after Jacoby Myers, it's really hard to project the target share for the Patriots week in and week out. Hunter Henry, started to earn some more targets. Jonnu Smith is back, so there's just a lot of mouths to feed there. I would not feel confident about his workload week to week, but he's certainly, an exciting player and someone that can rip off big plays with that speed.
Yeah, totally agree. I'm not too interested in Tyquan Thornton. I do have him in some best ball stuff though, so I'm excited for him to at least pop up every now and then. Debo for Damien Pierce. Yeah, I mean, you guys know I'm a certified Debo hater. This is one's going to be on the border for me, though. I assume you guys are fist pumping in Debo, though, right? Debo.
I mean,
Damien
this
Pierce.
is insane. This is insane. You have to take the high end wide receiver in these. I mean, do you disagree, Mark? Or
I don't know. I'm pretty optimistic on Pierce's workload. Like his rush attempt share is like JT and Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon and like the elite running back ones. And then his target share, he ran 50% of the routes weeks 4 and 5, had about a 20% target share. And they're coming off the bye with a rookie and Rex Burkhead's in his way. So, I think Pierce is a pretty locked in RB1. Not necessarily sure I'd trade Debo for him, but like if you are stacked at wide receiver, I actually don't think it's that crazy.
Oh my God, you guys are nuts.
The Elijah Moore stuff. Ed brings up a good point. Elijah Moore or Wandale rest of season. I can't believe this is where we're at with Elijah Moore right now. But Elijah Moore actually, to me, like not only are they trying to hide the MILF hunter Zach Wilson, but also when they do throw, I feel like I'm paralyzed. Like I think Garrett Wilson is actually the best, and that's how we have it. I don't think Corey Davis is that far behind. Corey Davis might actually be ahead of Elijah Moore. It wouldn't be the craziest thing at all. And so like for me, Elijah Moore and Wandale are actually really close, which is sad to say because I do think Elijah Moore is a very good player. Leonie, what do you think about these New York guys, Elijah versus Wandale?
Yeah, and since Zach Wilson came back, Elijah Moore snaps have gone from like 90% each week to 66%, 58% the last 2 weeks. Super concerning. Corey Davis is playing the most snaps of all the receivers. It's definitely a bit of a mess, but there's part of me that's just like, we know Elijah Moore is pretty talented. He was a good prospect. He was kind of breaking out last year. I think I would take him over Wandale just purely on talent and just kind of seeing what happens. But
yeah, I would take Wandale there, honestly. Okay. I just think with the amount of mouths to feed on the Jets compared to what we're seeing with the Giants, like I just really think, moving forward, like I would take Wandale Robinson to have more targets rest of the season than Elijah Moore.
I think as a median case that's correct. There's part of me though that's just like, I don't know if that median case is going to win you a league, and I would just tether to Elijah Moore's talent that we know is there and just kind of hope for something to change and happen, because crazy things happen over the course of an NFL season.
When you have Daniel Jones and Wandale Robinson on literally every single best ball team, all you can do is just pray for Danny Dimes and Wandale. By the way, this people I think are still frustrated with Joe Mixon. If you look at like expected points. I know, Leone, you have this behind the scenes, like expected points. In other words, if a player gets a carry from a 5-yard line, it's worth X, et cetera, et cetera. I think Joe Mixon might actually have the best workload in the entire league. Is that how you have it, Leone?
I have it. Yeah. Over the course of the season, he has the best. Looking at like the last 5 weeks, which I kind of use as cutoff just randomly for some of my stuff. He's dropped behind Eckler, Fournette, and CMC, but that's still obviously really good to have him fourth the last 5 weeks.
Right.
I think Mixon is really safe RB1 rest of the way. There are some guys that might have more like super high end ceiling than Mixon, but I think he's if we were drafting today, I think he's like a 1-2 turn guy.
Yeah.
Which is probably, I think that's how we have it ranked.
Yeah, we have him 14th right now. Exactly. So yeah.
Well, and last week we compared him to Nick Chubb and kind of said Mixon is a little safer just with the receiving workload. And that played out exactly in week 6. The Browns and Bengals both kind of played from behind. We're throwing the ball a lot. Mixon had 4 catches, 23 yards and a touchdown. So 12, receiving points in a PPR league. Nick Chubb had 1 catch for 14 yards and only 56 rushing yards. So it's just the weekly floor on Mixon is, strong in any format.
Totally agree. Okay. Let's talk about the Cowboys stuff. So it sounds like Dak's going to be back. We don't know for sure, but it sounds like Dak is going to be back. Cooper Rush has played fine. I think the ceiling clearly is higher. With Dak, we have CeeDee Lamb up at 13th overall, and Michael Gallup, whose role is starting to be a little bit better, up at 96th overall. Mark, what do you think about? I mean, the problem is that everybody knows Dak is coming back, right? So like, I'm not sure anybody's just like going to be giving up CD right now. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think CeeDee Lamb is just a great hold. I agree with Dak coming back. It's hard to buy him. A little tease that one of my buys is actually going to be from this team in our move to make later on. So I'll kind of hold it on that front. But CeeDee Lamb's target share has just been outrageous with Cooper Rush. It's over 30%, one of the highest in the league. So I can feel confident there. I'm interested, or with Schultz kind of getting out of the picture there. He's battling this PCL injury. That really opens things up for the wide receivers, and they just haven't been throwing the ball to running backs at all at this point. Zeke has a 4% target share. That's horrible. Tony Pollard around 8.5%. So, but really low there combined. 12.5% for the whole running back room is really low. So I'm interested to see if that comes up at all with Dak in there. But for the most part, I'm just kind of holding or looking to trade for Dallas guys, and I'll mention one specifically later.
Okay, teasing it. What a professional. Couple more small ones before we end here. As the Buffalo guy, I'd be remiss if I did not ask Leone about 2 things. A, the Shakir versus McKenzie situation. Everybody saw McKenzie have a bad game. You're allowed to have a bad game. Doesn't mean he's definitely going to lose his job, but you can make a case that he played so poorly in that game against the Chiefs that Shakir should close the gap there in the slot. And the other thing was, to me, it was so obvious. Anytime there is a huge game, the Bills want Devin Singletary to have the ball the whole game. I don't know how actionable that is for season long, though, because they're going to have a bunch of blowouts and a bunch of games they're not pressed in. And in those games, we're going to see a bunch of Zach Moss and James Cook as well. Leone, would you consider Singletary maybe a sell after his usage last week? And what do you think about the McKenzie versus Shakir stuff?
Yeah, so I guess like just looking at the Bills playoff schedule, they have Chicago in week 16, which is bad for Singletary, but they have Miami at home week 15, which is probably going to be a very big game. They have a Monday night game week 17 at Cincinnati. It's probably going to be a pretty big game. So 2 out of 3 ain't bad for Singletary there in terms of the playoffs. The Shakir McKenzie stuff's tough to break down. I do want to, I have to remind myself, as we were talking about this morning, that Jamison Crowder is out for the season. And part of my bear case on McKenzie after the hype kind of hit in the offseason was, I think push comes to shove, they're going to use Jamison Crowder in this role at the very end of the season. Now you remove Crowder, Shakir could obviously cut into that, but I think that's still like probably a net positive for McKenzie. I'm just not sure if it's going to be like a super valuable role. And I'm not sure if the contingent value on McKenzie is like, I think we kind of assume that is good contingent value if someone gets hurt. And I don't know if it would play out like that in actuality. Like, I think Shakir is the guy that would probably get a big bump if like one of the outside receivers were to get hurt.
I'm still going to be chasing Shakir for the rest of my life after I played Marquez Callaway over Shakir 2 weeks ago in DFS, and just it was so much pain and it was so dumb that I'm just looking for spots now where I can bet on Shakir just to try to get unstuck. Anyways, Oh, one more small thing here. The Allen Robinson stuff, Mark. We talked about Allen Robinson last week. We had pretty much given up on him. I mean, I had pretty much given up on him as kind of a touchdown dependent guy. What we saw this past week was instead of a bunch of screens to Tyler Higbee, there was more Allen Robinson in the game plan. Clearly, Higbee did come in with an ankle injury. Maybe that was part of it. Or also maybe they watched tape and they were like, Christ, man, what are we doing? We're trying to run offense with a bunch of screens to Tyler Higbee. Maybe we should start doing some different things. So I kind of think that maybe we wrote off Allen Robinson too soon, and that's on me. I was pressing on us to write off Allen Robinson, but I don't feel great about it, but I'm at least more encouraged than last week. I just feel like this offense can't support both of them. They can't support Higbee and A-Rob, right? Like one of them is going to have a bad game every week. Any thoughts there, Mark?
I think it kind of comes down to the fact that he scored a touchdown. Anytime you score a touchdown, you're going to look good. I believe he had 5 catches for 63 yards. That's an okay week, but certainly nothing you're writing home about. And, maybe we did bump him down too far because he has been getting those looks inside the 10. He already has 8 targets inside the 10-yard line, which is, second best in the NFL. So the weeks that he's able to convert those are definitely going to be solid. But Van Jefferson's coming back. This Rams offensive line, as you mentioned, lost their starting left tackle for the season, torn Achilles. I still think being bearish on the Rams offense compared to the market is probably where we want to be. But certainly, anytime he gets a touchdown is going to be a good week for Allen Robinson.
Real quick on stashes, Leone. Some of the stashes, like we talked last week about Josh Kelly. Note that Josh Kelly got hurt. He's gonna be out for a while. I think Isaiah Spiller will probably be active with Sony Michel going forward next to Austin Eckler, obviously. So that's one to note. Then there's other stashes like hurt guys like Damien Harris and Cordell Patterson. It's hard to assign value to them. Damien Harris was practicing last week and actually got on the field in warmups before that game against Cleveland. And there was worry that he might actually play for the Ramondre Stevenson truthers like us. I mean, if Damien Harris is going to come back quick, maybe Ramondre's a sell high. I don't know. And then also, what do you think about Cordell Patterson?
Yeah, I know Herzig was higher than we were initially on Patterson and Damien Harris, just given their values when they come back. I don't have a strong take on either of those guys. I'm a little bit worried when they come back, how good their roles are going to be. They weren't really throwing to Patterson that much for Atlanta, and Caleb Huntley has kind of established himself. I wonder if he plays the goal line role. And also Damian Williams is coming back, who actually seemed like he might have been ahead of Patterson week 1. And then with Damien Harris, with the way Ramondre is playing, if it's 2/3 Ramondre, 1/3 Damien Harris, which I don't think it would be. I'm probably more optimistic on Harris than Patterson, actually, now that I think about it, just because I think there's a little bit more upside in terms of efficiency there.
Atlanta's been so good running the football, but they've been so good running the football with anyone. It doesn't have to be Cordell Patterson. I think they think they can run with almost anyone there. But yeah, I think Damien Harris, the initial report was he was going to be out 2 to 3 weeks. He's missed 1 so far. And so maybe he's trying to get back sooner, but I wouldn't be surprised if he missed another week. All right. We've said it all. We've probably said too much, to be honest. Let's go to our move to make. Mark, you teased it already. You told the people it's going to be someone on Dallas. What is your move to make?
Yeah, mine's going to be buy Michael Gallup as a wide receiver 3. We currently have him ranked in kind of the 40s right now, but I think there's reason for optimism there. I just think he's a great buy low, kind of with Dak coming back. You mentioned it's not necessarily that sneaky just because everyone knows Dak is coming back, but the pace has been really solid for Dallas even without Dak. I think that will continue. I think the pass rate will come up for them. They've had a negative pass rate over expectation in pretty much every one of Cooper Rush's starts. I mentioned Dalton Schultz is battling this PCL injury, taking his 15 to 18% target share kind of out of the equation or down a little bit certainly helps Michael Gallup here. And then they have an awesome schedule kind of upcoming. They are at home against the Lions, the Bears, travel to the Packers, Vikings, Giants, Colts, Texans, and Jags. So just a lot of good potential pass defenses to go against here with Michael Gallup. And then CeeDee Lamb has popped up on the injury report the last couple of weeks towards the end of the week with a hip and groin injury, I believe. So, if anything happens to CeeDee Lamb here, Michael Gallup could easily be the wide receiver 1 in Dallas with Dak coming back. So I think it's just a good time to buy Gallup.
Yeah, I always was a believer in Michael Gallup's talent. I think he's a very good player. My biggest concern on the Gallup and Lamb stuff is that this Dallas defense is good, very good. I mean, they can win with a run-heavy attack. They can win with a defensive kind of ugly game attack. And it's not like those old Dallas games where you knew their defense was bad and they would get into these wild shootouts with Dak. But I do think Michael Gallup is interesting and undervalued right now. Leone, I give you the floor.
I like a little bit of post hype on Romeo Doubs for Green Bay, where, he started to break out. I think people were really excited. And then he had a couple of down weeks. And I think between those down weeks, he's only scored like 6 PPR points each of the last 2 weeks. Sammy Watkins was just kind of designated to return. And if people are thinking that the window has kind of closed on a breakout, I think they're wrong, and that you should be looking to acquire him. 2 of his highest air yards games, his 2 highest air yards games of the season were the last 3 weeks. His expected fantasy points in each of the last 4 weeks was higher than any of the first 2 weeks. So the role currently grew for him. He had 113 air yards off 9 targets last week. We've seen them do some of those like freebie goal line plays with him. So I'm pretty excited about Doubs. I will say Lazard is playing much better than I expected coming into the year, and I would have Lazard ahead of Doubs, but Doubs is the guy that I think might be more acquirable just because of the recent performance.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The opportunity has been great for Romeo Doubs. His production on his opportunity has been bad. I think he was at like 6.15 yards per target on the season so far, which is, really bad for someone that everybody had really high hopes for talent is catching passes from Aaron Rodgers. But still, opportunity has been amazing for Romeo Doubs. All right. I said a few already on the show. I was just giving it out. I said, sell Brian Robinson, buy Joe Mixon, sell Jeff Wilson. I'm going to go to one that we haven't talked about yet, and a guy that I'm not usually on. But if people are, 1-5, 2-4, how much longer can they wait for Keenan Allen? The way this has broken for the Chargers offense is that they're having a hard time getting the ball down the field. Offensive line problems, offensive line injuries yet again have kind of hurt. And maybe Justin Herbert's rib injury has been a factor as well. He's checking down so much. I mean, my God, Austin Eckler is going to catch freaking 115 passes this year. We need to stop that. And the way we stop that is by Keenan Allen getting back in the mix. Keenan Allen is like the best wide receiver in the NFL at getting open underneath. And so I think that's exactly what the Chargers need right now, expecting Keenan Allen to get back in practice this week and play in week 7 for a clean matchup against the Seahawks. And so you will want to get Keenan Allen before this week. All right. That is going to do it for another rest of season top 150 show. If you're watching on YouTube, we'd really appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button. It helps us a lot to continue to produce free content like this. If you're listening on podcast, be sure you're subscribed. And also, NBA, baby. It's out. It's up. Head to the subscribe page to check out everything we have going for NBA. For Mark. For Leone. For producer Adam. I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.